Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Progressive Bitcoiner. I'm your host, Trey Walsh, and today we have on the show the Bitcoin explorers, Rikki and Laura. Now, these are two of my favorite people in the Bitcoin space because I think they do such an incredible job of showing Bitcoin's use cases as they do their travels around the world, as they use Bitcoin in peer-to-peer ways with small businesses. And I think this is some of the most important work that can be done in Bitcoin, just showing people how fun and easy to use Bitcoin is and showing where mass adoption is taking place through peer-to-peer marketplaces in their travels. And it's just fun content to keep along with. So I was really looking forward to this conversation. And we talk about all of that. We talk about their travels. We talk about growing Bitcoin adoption using the Lightning Network and how important the Lightning Network is. We talk about Bitcoin culture and how we need to diversify and increase different communities in Bitcoin to show that it really is this worldwide phenomenon, and so much more. This was such a great and fun conversation. I really appreciate Rikki and Laura coming on the podcast. And please follow along with them. I'll put their handles and stuff in the show notes so that you can all follow along and support their work and reshare their work and get more of the word out and show your normie friends, what they're up to. This is one of the best ways to show friends, oh, look at this cool way that Bitcoin's being used in Turkey or in Lebanon, or they use Bitcoin for this hotel or for this merchant. It's just a really fun way to show what Bitcoin is all about. So really encourage you all to do that, share their work. And please let me know any feedback you have on this episode and any other episode. You can always reach out to me at hello@progressivebitcoiner.com. All right, I'll let you get to the episode and we will see you again next week. Good morning
Good morning.
the Bitcoin explorers. How are you
Thank
guys?
you.
Good morning.
Very good. What about you?
Doing well. Little tired. Usually, so the time we're recording, and hello to everyone on the live stream at zap.stream, 7:30 my time, just afternoon your time. And I mentioned to people, grab a coffee, come join us. And someone mentioned like, oh, I'll grab like spaghetti. I thought it was the funniest thing. And I was like, oh, I have some like spaghetti in my fridge. So do I just bring that out and like eat that while I'm talking to you guys?
We are the
But
first Italian guests of the Progressive Bitcoiner. We're so happy. This is such a privilege.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I took Italian in college, and I actually got to the point where I felt like I could speak okay. It's one of my favorite languages, and then since then just nothing. It's just gone completely away, and it makes me so sad. It just means I need to
Oh,
use it more and come visit
so
you
we're
guys.
not
That's what it
recording
means.
this podcast in Italian. We're not using your Italian.
No, definitely not. Unless I do want to. I think I saw like BTC sessions using that weird like AI thing that can like change
No,
your language as you're talking. So unless we did that, but it still looks a little weird to me. So
Yeah.
we
It's
we won't do
happening
that.
though. It's happening
Yeah.
though. Not yet. But soon we're going to
Yes.
be able to have seamless translation. So cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, for those that don't know you guys, do you want to give a little introduction to who you both are and what the Bitcoin Explorers is all about?
I'm Laura. I'm a graphic designer and social media manager. Recently, I started with Rikki to travel the world to report the Bitcoin adoption around the world. And yeah,
Yeah. My name is Rikki. I'm an activist. I discovered Bitcoin years ago and I fell in love for the whole idea because the way I see it, Bitcoin is the most powerful tool to protect human rights and financial freedom all over the world. So that's the reason why I discovered Bitcoin, and I started using Bitcoin in my work on a daily basis. And then I started traveling in emerging markets and hyperinflating economy, chronicling Bitcoin adoption in those areas of the world. I'm Italian, as you can hear. So I started my podcast. It's called Bitcoin Italia Podcast. It was early 2019. And that was the first Bitcoin only podcast in Italian. And then we started more recently, it's been 1 year now, this project that it's in English, actually in Italy English, that it's called Bitcoin Explorers, and we travel the world chronicling Bitcoin adoption, and we mainly use our social media, X, Instagram, and YouTube to post our social media contents and vlogs.
That's awesome. And Riki, I got to give a shout out to you as well. Yeah, I used to be a little spicier on Twitter. Let's put it that way. I think I've toned back a little bit. Just I think getting a little tired, but also like let me just focus on what's important here. And you were among many people that had kind of dropped into my DMs, just being like, thanks, like and I think there's a lot of people spreading this from us, especially for a US audience, something like progressive means a lot. When I talk to my European friends or people around the world, they don't know what that word means. So most of our listeners are US based. We have a growing contingency in Europe. And I think the reason for that is not about the word progressive, but about some of the things we're just talking about and the normal conversations we're pushing and the way that I'm trying to push talking about Bitcoin, not only in a removing politics from it or kind of disassociating. It doesn't mean you have to be a libertarian or into all of these things, but also just in a mainstream, normal way. Let's not have it sound like a Ponzi scheme, right? Like it's not a Ponzi scheme, but sometimes I think people can underestimate the way you talk about Bitcoin is like if you make it sound too good to be true, people are going to assume it's too good to be true. So just talking about it in these ways and focusing exactly on what you said during your intro just now, which is like human rights, use cases. I love to see like peer-to-peer use cases like you guys focus on. I think those things are so important. So the work you all are doing and so many others growing more and more is like I think what's going to increase Bitcoin adoption. So do you all think about I know you think about increasing Bitcoin adoption, but what for you is the driving force, maybe personally and then also at like a 30,000 foot for what you guys are doing?
Very interesting question. It's hard. It's very hard to say, to be honest with you. First of all, in Bitcoin, we talk a lot about mass adoption, right? But
Mhm,
what does exactly mass adoption mean, right? I mean, smartphones are in mass adoption. Yes, I guess so. Are tablets in mass adoption? Smartwatches are in mass adoption? I don't think yet. So first of all, I struggle a little bit with this concept of mass adoption. As Bitcoiners, we all would love Bitcoin to change the world quickly, fast.
mhm,
But the truth is, that's not gonna happen, guys. It's so
mhm,
early, and Bitcoin, it's such a disruptive new technology that it's gonna take decades only to
mhm,
start, right? Only to see Bitcoin in its early stages. We recently, few days ago, it was the 15th anniversary of the white paper,
Mm.
right?
mhm,
31st October. 15 years is nothing when we think about how long it takes to these kind of technology to do what they are supposed to do. And this is
mhm,
something, for example, we see regularly when we travel. You mentioned X before, or X Twitter. I don't know how we're supposed to call it nowadays
mhm,
anymore. But as Bitcoiner, we kind of we are locked in this echo chamber, right? X. Everyone agree with us on X, so we have the feeling this is happening. Bitcoin is winning all over the world. We are changing everything. Whoo, awesome! We won. False.
Yeah.
The
mhm,
moment you get out of X, out of your bubble, and travel in the real world is the moment you realize we barely started. There is so
mhm,
much to do. There's so much work to do in terms of education and adoption, because these two things are the same. There is no
mhm,
adoption without education, and vice versa. So yeah, that's the thing. Adoption, to reach a better adoption, we have to find a way to educate the masses in a more effective way.
Laura, over to you. What do you think is one of the more effective ways? So you tweeted what yesterday about we should be on Instagram. I remember seeing that, and just so many other things. And I've heard some from so many folks just saying similar things, reaching people where they're at. And it's this
Yeah.
balance of advocating for like a new way of doing things, which is what Bitcoin is all about, but doing so in a slow and gradual way that can actually pull in the people that we want to pull in, which is everyone, or especially those that need Bitcoin and have use cases for it. So what about on your end? What do you think are just it can either be principles or just some practical things amongst friends? What are some things that you've found beneficial for growing Bitcoin adoption, awareness, that kind of thing?
As you said, we have to go where people are at. We have to speak their own languages, not our own language. We
Mhm.
want to tell them what they need to hear, not what we want to say. Sometimes Twitter, it look at me like a super selfish um platform, because everyone just goes there, writes what they think, and on their own way, waiting that someone engage with it or interact with it. It's not a social that is built for others people. Well, Meta is fucked, and we all know that. But the way
Mhm.
Instagram is made is like you want to make things easier for other people, more engaging for other people. It puts yourself in a way where it doesn't matter what you think, it just matters how other people get what you think. So I think it's very important to go on Instagram, to go on TikTok, to go on other social media, speak with young kids. We are doing a lot of educational programs, which is great, but there is not a single page on Instagram that talks well about Bitcoin with good graphics, with engaging and funny content. There is not one. There is not a single company that has put a little effort, a little marketing budget on building a huge Instagram page. And when I say big, I speak millions. We need an Instagram
Mhm.
page about Bitcoins that have millions of followers. That is the main platform where we can defend ourselves when the New York Times writes bullshit, when Greenpeace does the skeleton. We really need a main page. I know Bitcoin is not a company, so this is very hard to do, but it can
Mhm.
be.
And there are
And
Bitcoin
there are
companies
companies, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
out
yeah.
there, so they should focus more. I have the feeling we are a little snobbish, right? As a
Mhm.
community, we decided that X is a better platform. I'm not
Mhm.
debating this. Maybe it is true, but
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
reality is, for example, in the last couple of years, we travel extensively in Central America and more recently in the Middle East. Nobody knows what X is there. Everyone is on Instagram.
Yeah.
They are not even on Facebook anymore. Instagram is the new Facebook, and it is what it is. This is a reality. So it's kind of dumb to be snobbish, because in the end these are just tools, and you can
Mhm.
and we should use them.
Yeah, it there is that it's that purity, right? So it was funny. I was talking with Dennis Porter recently on an episode that'll be coming out. I'm not sure when in orientation to this one, but one thing that he pointed out was that you got to think. So first of all, Bitcoin's really early. Second of all, a lot of the leading voices in Bitcoin have been what I think Jameson Lopp coined, but also what I talk about as like lifestyle maximalists. So these people that are based on like
Mm.
purity, based on their way of life, based on particular religion, based on US based libertarianism, all of this. And they've been in the space for much longer. Now we're diversifying a bit. I think you've seen some of the left progressives coming in, like 20 being more vocal 2020, 2021, more folks that are doing these travel things like you all, especially the last 2 3 years. So the Bitcoin ecosystem, in terms of those that are producing content, those that are talking about Bitcoin and focusing on Bitcoin and not crypto, that's new and growing. Really, just the past couple of years, I feel like. So we're still in that transition period, But we've got to get away from the purity. You're right. It's a tool, and I like what Laura said recently about, a lot of the other cryptos are winning a bit with engagement because they're willing to go to where people are at, because they're advertising everywhere. And again, that could be a factor of, fiat money and markets and things like that. They have more ad revenue because people are just gambling more with these companies than, say, a Bitcoin company, which they consider maybe boring. I think that's gonna start shifting. I mean, FTX was just convicted yesterday. I think these things will help, and not FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried. Um, so I think these things will help shift some of that, but I think you're exactly right, and that's interesting about, Instagram. I know it's, like, the 2nd most used or whatever chart I posted yesterday, but that's interesting to see a lot of the world shifting to Instagram when it was Facebook for a large part of the world until a year or 2 ago, and it still is, but that Instagram use, I agree, it's universally the one that's probably used the most right now in terms of, like, active engagement.
especially in those areas in emerging
Mhm,
markets. We've seen with our own eyes in El Salvador 60 years old people doing
Live on
lives on
Instagram
Instagram.
about the square, people dancing, they were waving other people home.
When you we
yeah,
just got back from Turkey and Lebanon, every
mhm,
shop, every even small shop there, they have their Instagram account out in display out of their windows. So definitely Instagram has a huge potential in reaching
mhm,
all those people.
Until we are not as loud as shitcoiners, we cannot complain about as many shitcoiners that are out there.
mhm,
Until every company has a huge Instagram, TikTok profile that create 5 contents per day, just like Solana do, we shouldn't complain
mhm,
because they're beating us on that, and that's laziness. That's yeah, poshiness. Like, I'm too cool to be on Instagram. I'm just on Nostr. Who goes on Nostr to to talk about Bitcoin? So I
Bitcoiners.
think we should be much more
it's an
humble
echo
in that.
chamber, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we should be much more humble and start working more on social media.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is, like, a lot of people think, "Oh, Bitcoin's inevitable, so we'll just wait here and we'll say,
Yeah.
'told you so,' when that shitcoin fails." And, like, it will at some point. Like, the time frames are different on a lot of these. They're all companies, right? And you look at any company, they usually fail. Hey, if Apple comes in and wants to launch their own stable coin and they get government backing, sure, maybe that one will last a little bit longer, right? But these are all inevitably gonna fail or wither out at some point, just kind of historically. But taking that assumption view and just going from there, I always go back to the point of, like, I got into this space because I was only hearing one particular set of voices, and I was hearing from others, "Hey, I'm only hearing one particular set of voices." And my friends were thinking that something like Bitcoin is boiling the oceans, it's for criminals, all this, and I'm like, "I can't take it anymore. I have to try to do something about this and try to, add my voice or whatever, because it's so loud, what people think Bitcoin is." And I think we've grown a lot since then, but there's so many days where I'm like, this is still gonna take, and I think you all are in the same boat. This is gonna take
Yeah.
years and years and years. So it's like just being consistent. Like, you guys are consistently posting content. I'm consistently just trying to, let's just put out episodes week after week after week and just keep doing it until this isn't a thing anymore, which probably always will be a use case for arguing to the left or why Bitcoin matters. But
Mm-mm. And
gosh, you're
it's not
exactly
even
right.
only about hodling and staking sats. I don't want to have a fiat job for the rest of my life and just buying Bitcoin with that. I want to have a Bitcoin
Yep.
job. I want my friends to travel the world and being able to work for international companies that pay them in Bitcoin. I want a new design and informatics schools to teach about Bitcoin because Bitcoin is kind of closer as it will be if we don't, work on Bitcoin adoption. So it's also about
Yeah.
Bitcoin mindset. This is what I want. This is what I wish
the
for the kids.
the mindset, we can just sit and wait because Bitcoin is gonna happen anyway. I'm 100% sure that Bitcoin is gonna happen anyway, but if we work better, it's gonna happen way much faster.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm okay. You want to just hodl and wait? It's okay, bro. You have kids, good for them, because they're going to enjoy your Bitcoin. If you are doing
Yeah.
it for the kids and only for the kids, it makes sense. But if you want to see Bitcoin happen in your lifetime, maybe you should work a little, you should be a little bit more proactive.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I know both of you are big on spending and using Bitcoin, and I am as well. It really depends on like jurisdiction.
And
The U.S. they like
replacing
to make
them.
yes, and replacing. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, yeah. Just spend it and just that's it. Just spend your Bitcoin, have no Bitcoin. No, definitely like spend and replace. It's the same concept. I am that's one thing that I'm worried about in the US is that, I also am in the of opinion like Bitcoin is here, Bitcoin is out. If they wanted to squash it, it would have been best to do it forever ago. It's really hard to physically think about how to do that at this point. But places in the US will be very tricky as they are with most things. Tricky about how we talk about inflation, tricky about how we talk about the economy's fine, tricky about all these things. They're tricky about trying to put in these sneaky regulations, trying to tax it to oblivion, trying to make it hard for people to use it. Some politicians here don't want people to actually own their own Bitcoin, period. Like the senator where I am based, Elizabeth Warren, which Bitcoin Twitter, rages on about all the time. And I do too, as someone who is a constituent of her and from her camp, I would argue. So it's interesting. Have you all found I know you've been to different jurisdictions that are a little more friendly to Bitcoin peer-to-peer spending. Um, in the places that are not as friendly to, because there's different areas in Europe, different areas in Africa. How do you find those peer-to-peer markets in terms of that? Because from what I've seen and heard as an outside observer, sometimes it just doesn't matter when people are using it and people need it. And growing from the ground up is the way to do it. So I'm curious how you all think about peer to peer versus, because in the US, we're all like, a lot of people jump in. I mean, you've seen with the Bitcoin ETFs, companies are like, okay, they've approved this now. It's safe to use Bitcoin. It's crazy. Rather than just using it like people are around the world. So I'm curious how you all view that.
Of course, jurisdictions are tricky all over the world. You have more friendly countries and less friendly countries. But that changes very little in a long term perspective. For
Hmm.
example, we just traveled in Turkey. Officially, Turkey is not a Bitcoin friendly country. The
Hmm.
president there, Erdogan, back in 2021, May 2021, approved a regulation that, for example, bans mining, Bitcoin mining,
Hmm.
and Bitcoin payments as well. So
Yeah.
the Turks officially they are allowed to buy and sell Bitcoin, and they can hodl Bitcoins. For
Hmm.
them, is a store of value like gold, but they
Yep.
cannot use Bitcoin to pay for goods or services. And
Hmm.
this is what this regulation says. And then still you realize that in 2023 shops are accepting Bitcoin in Istanbul,
Hmm.
but all sort of shops, small merchants, barber shops.
Watch.
She got her tooth fixed.
Oh, that's right. I remember that
Yeah,
video. Yeah, yeah.
and and we paid in Bitcoin. So how is this possible if officially the
Hmm.
regulation bans Bitcoin payment? Well, for example, we talked to a couple of Bitcoin lawyers, and they told us that this regulation is actually unconstitutional, because according to the
Hmm.
constitution in Turkey, only a law can ban payments, not a regulation. So
Interesting.
a regulation is not enough. So even if they did it, not a single fine has been made to someone or to a merchant because he accepted Bitcoin as well.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's why people still does that. On the other hand, though, In Turkey, freedom of speech, unfortunately, is very bad. It ranks
Hmm.
very low according to freedom of speech, free journalism, and this is an issue because every media platform in Turkey, basically what they do is government propaganda. So you
Hmm.
cannot discuss on newspaper or big media outlet about inflation. You cannot discuss Bitcoin. You cannot talk about
Stablecoin of any kind.
exchanges. Everything that is related to the crypto world is banned. And
Hmm.
this is a very effective technique because even if the Turks can actually accept Bitcoin, someone does that, but the
Hmm.
vast majority of the population is not aware that this is an option. And this is
Yeah.
why I keep saying if we want Bitcoin to succeed, our focus has to be on human rights. We
Hmm.
cannot be selective when it comes to human rights, because if we want Bitcoin to succeed faster, everything has to be there. Freedom of speech, freedom of all kind of freedoms, because
Hmm.
if governments have control on something, they're gonna use that to work actively against Bitcoin.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So
you know that phrase, everyone buys Bitcoin at the price they deserve, but that is so
Oh, that's one of
stupid.
my
I
least
hate
favorite.
it. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yes, it is if you have 10 friends in the US or super rich, and that there's one that doesn't care about Bitcoin. Okay, but this is not the case for half of the people that don't know what Bitcoin is or what Bitcoin are for. So we should work much more on those people because they deserve
Yeah.
yeah,
Bitcoin much more than we do sometimes.
because there is a big lack of there is a big lack of awareness, and knowledge. For example,
Hmm.
in our lately in the Middle East, we were shocked to realize how many people is on Binance,
Mm-mm.
for example.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
know
They're everywhere over
nothing,
there.
everywhere. They
Hmm.
invested millions in advertising in those
Yeah.
countries. So
Hmm. Hmm.
those areas of the world, if they understand that potentially Bitcoin is something that is going to help them achieve a better life, if they understand that potentially Bitcoin is a great store of value, they know nothing about self custody. And even
Hmm.
if they got fucked by banks, when you tell them, listen, but you got, I mean, your local currency is hyperinflating 60% on an annual basis. Your banks are closing and you just lost everything with the legacy financial world, and now
Hmm.
you have Bitcoin, and you keep your Bitcoins
On a
on a
website.
centralized exchange that is a
Hmm.
private company. That's even
Yeah.
more dangerous. They look at you when you tell them this, they look at you in shock, and
Mm.
you realize they've
No.
never even thought about it. It's not in
Yeah.
their, you know that means that all our amazing speeches on self custody, our books, our podcasts, they don't listen to them. We are
Hmm.
failing in
Yeah.
teaching them.
I mean, it's one of those things that I'm trying to do my best to support as many folks, such as yourself, such as others. And I want to say his name is like Kinetic Bitcoin. There's so many others that are doing these short snips, like obviously like what Carla and Walker are doing, what Joe is doing out in your neck of the woods. So many people
Paco.
that are able to do like short clips, and I'm like that. My thing. I enjoy longer conversations. I enjoy talking to folks like our audience is mainly US based, just trying to inform people who are in the privileged, most likely they're listening to this US based podcast on their iPhone, Apple Podcast, whatever, telling them this is why Bitcoin matters. Can you please stop? They're like, Elizabeth Warren, can you please stop getting in the way, because this impacts like a lot of what happens in the US, unfortunately. impacts the world. And it's what really frustrates me and sucks about the global financial system. The way the US goes, the world follows in a lot of these ways. And Alex Gladstein does a great job talking about this, and the IMF and all of these other things. But, that's my focus. But also, I'm like, let's reach those people on Instagram with these 60-second sound bites of why self custody is important. Just that little snippet to make people think, oh, okay, let me look into that, right? Like, that's not going to be the end all be all right there, but just the thought of like, hey, that's not really yours. And the other thing I'll add is what's really new and I think really confusing if I step out of anything I know about Bitcoin. So you have physical cash. Okay, you can hold that. You have cash you can use, coins, whatever. But anyone that's ever had digital money has used it in like a bank account, right? So the thought is, okay, bank account, that's where you have your money. With this crypto stuff, it's digital on that you have to have it in some account. I think that, it doesn't I don't have to think too hard to think why people would think, how do you hold your own? What does that even look like? I mean, I can't code. I can't, what do you mean? Like hold your own, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that Coinbase. I'm going to use that Binance or whatever. So I could totally imagine, I think for Bitcoiners to be like, oh, that's crazy. They don't know that or whatever. No, I can totally imagine where people are like, what do you mean not have it in Binance? Isn't that like the way to keep it? I don't want to lose it. Right. And then you're like,
Exactly.
no,
Yes.
you're going to lose it at some point.
Sometimes I feel like we should talk less about Bitcoin itself, more about the principles behind Bitcoin and why Bitcoin. For
Mhm.
example, you can easily talk about self custody without mentioning Bitcoin at all, ever. People will just realize
Yeah.
that Bitcoin is the best way to self custody something that you have. We can talk about privacy. We can talk about store of value. What is a store of value? What are the characteristics of a store of value? And when you learn them, and you study a little bit of Bitcoin, you know the Bitcoin is just the most perfect answer. But I say this to myself as well. Sometimes it's just Bitcoin this, Bitcoin that, Bitcoin that. It looks like a company. It looks like a brand with a very
Mhm.
bad marketing compartment. And so
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk more about different kind of things: freedom of speech, women empowerment, human
Mhm.
rights. Bitcoin will come along because we know it's the answer. But when I was listening to Bitcoin podcast, I was a Bitcoiner already. I didn't
Mm.
just
Yeah.
listen a podcast because, oh, let's learn something new. I've heard of Bitcoin thing. No, when I started to listen his podcast, I was a fan of his podcast. But by the way, I was already a Bitcoiner. Like
Was this
I want.
before you 2 were together?
Yes. I
Okay,
was
okay.
a fan.
Cool. Yeah.
She was a
She was a
fan,
big fan.
and
Yeah.
then a groupie, and then my
Yeah.
partner. This is how.
Nice. Okay.
And now your boss.
Nice.
And now my boss. Exactly.
But yeah, I knew when I wanted to hear. I love their podcast so much, just like I am sure people love your podcast. But they are listening because they are already Bitcoiner.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to speak to women that if they're fighting for their
mm.
rights, but they are using the fiat system to do so, it's
Mhm.
just so stupid because the fiat system is the main tool for oppressing women around the world. So if you
Yeah.
want, there's an alternative. But let's talk more about the principles behind Bitcoin. Let's not be
Yes.
too fanboy of
Mm.
this technology that looks like a brand.
And let's
Mhm.
use local communities more. To be honest with
Yeah.
you, Trey, what makes me very excited is what's going on. What happened in the past, I don't know, 3 years? All
Mhm.
these local community popping up all over the world. Everything we know started probably in El Salvador with the Bitcoin
Mhm.
Beach model, and then we have communities growing all over the world: Central America, South America, Africa, Middle East, Asia. All these
Mhm.
communities, they are doing grassroots Bitcoin education and adoption. And this is something very important that we should, I believe, support more.
Yeah.
In our travel, we are ambassadors of the Lugano Plan B initiative, and I
Mhm.
think what they are doing there is the right approach. Of course, there is this Plan B Lugano. They accept Bitcoin, blah blah blah. This is okay. This is cool,
Mhm.
but let's face it. Lugano, Swiss, is peak first world. So
Mhm.
that's not actually what matters the most. What I think is huge, is the summer school they are doing in Lugano, and all these educational program they are investing in, for example, in El Salvador,
Mhm.
partnering with Bitcoin educators from all over the world. And while we travel as their ambassador, we are scouting for new communities and new educational programs to build there in those markets, in those countries. Because, of
Mhm.
course, bro, I'm Italian, you're American. We cannot talk to the Lebanese people, to the Turks,
Mm-mm.
to the
Yeah.
Indian people. We need someone there that does the job, and we need to support those communities as much as we can, because on the other side, in the shitcoin world, we have those massive companies, and they invest billions in emerging markets because
Mhm.
they know it's a huge market. And
Yeah.
but hardcore Bitcoin education usually have no budget, so we
Mhm.
have to move as a community to help them, because otherwise this is gonna take a very long time, my friend.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Bitbox. Now, Bitbox is a hardware wallet that's open source, incredibly secure and easy to use, and it's what I'm using to safely secure my Bitcoin in cold storage. Now, I know self custodying Bitcoin can really be intimidating, but Bitbox is designed for ease of use without compromising on security. It's USB C compatible and allows you to easily back up and restore your private keys with a micro SD card, which is really cool. Now, you can purchase the Bitbox using the promo code TPB at the link found in the show notes for 5% off your purchase. And I really want to thank Bitbox for their support of the podcast, and I'm really excited about this new partnership. All right, I'll let you get back to the episode now. Yeah, and you're so right about that. And the one thing that I try to do as well, it sounds silly, but so my audience is still niche in terms of progressives and Bitcoiners in the US, right? Are a lot of people, and some people tune in to be like, well, what's he on about? Or if they like the guest or something like that, right? So it's so early in that regard. But another is like a lot of times I kind of plead with people, if you have financial means, okay, we're not the people to do that, but like spend your sats on them. Like go to their geyser fund and donate your hodl. You're sitting there with all this Bitcoin, or you're sitting there in a comfortable, privileged place. Support it any way that you can. And this is a really silly example, but I think the past 2-3 years, like you mentioned, I got to a more comfortable place, not because, the hash rate has been increasing with miners, or because we have all these capital and resources, or because the SEC is like, seems to be more okay with Bitcoin existing, all of this. But on like Twitter, Instagram, so many places, I'm seeing these little accounts pop up with like 80 followers, whatever. That's like this, this community in Brazil, this community in Thailand, this community in Zimbabwe, that like all of these local grassroots like meetups. Like I'm seeing so many global meetups just growing their little social media presence, and you see people interacting with them like in their own language, whatever. And I'm like, oh, it's here, it's not going anywhere. Like these people are using
The
it in
vegan
places
Bitcoin
where the governments are
community.
like, yeah, the vegan Bitcoin
Oh my
community,
god,
yeah,
my
there's like
favorite.
there's like 20 of us now. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I used to troll on it so much. I posted on Noster again yesterday, because Noster is another thing where like I am such a proponent of the tech and like what it is. It's like censorship resistant social media. I think it's incredible for activists, incredible for so many people. But the community, it's like just devs that are really talking about it, and it's just Bitcoin only focus. And it doesn't actually have to be about Bitcoin, period. I think it's a natural place for people to talk about Bitcoin, and you can do that if you want. But I was posting about like making dinner last night with my cast iron, and I'm like, vegans use cast iron too. Like sometimes I just like to throw that out there just to add something different, not
Yeah,
because I'm just like,
yeah.
it's such an echo chamber. Like, come on, guys. And
We need more
that's a whole nother
diversity.
conversation.
Good job.
Yeah, well, I try, and we need people that like, I'm a white guy running a podcast, like, right? So we need like more like women doing this. Like, I love hearing from women in the Bitcoin space, or just anything, because like whether it's you, or I was just listening to the episode that Natalie did with Walker and Carla
Mhm.
like yesterday, and just the way Carla talks about Bitcoin, it kind of sounds like my wife. Like my wife took like a year to really kind of get what this was about, just coming from the normal route, because she was so just as I was, but so she couldn't push through where I could a little bit push through the bro culture, push through like why people are calling me names on social media because I'm not a libertarian who eats steak. Like this was like a huge thing for her. So like in general, like women are so turned off by like I'm turned off by it, but then women are so turned off by the community that they see in, in the Western world, but it kind of goes beyond. This it could be in Germany, this can be in South Africa. I've heard many stories, not just in the US, of this type of stuff. And it sounds silly, but a lot of people hear about Bitcoin on social media. So if that's what they're seeing, that could be a turnoff. And it's not as simple as, oh, just push through it. Bitcoin's like not about that. It's like, yeah, I know that, but a lot of people just stop there. They're like, I don't want any part of this. That's bad.
It is. And that tells you that it's so early.
Yeah. I keep going back to that too. It's so incredibly early. And you mentioned, I think some people too think that once technology's here, things happen so quickly. And it has in a lot of ways. Like a lot of things have changed, but also we're not just talking about like code and tech or like a software company. We're talking about like a monetary revolution. So the only
Making.
thing we can compare it to is like gold. And that has like a 2000 plus year history, and think about how long that took for something like that to even make its way as a currency. Like the first 100 years of Bitcoin, I would argue, is early. Like until we stop mining all the coins that will exist, that is the early period. And then after that, we'll see what happens. I know like different types of things will change, different apps, different hardware wallets, those sort of technologies will change, but I think that foundational philosophy and code of what makes Bitcoin exist, my personal opinion is I think 100 years is still early on this. And I think some people think, oh, the early stage already happened, now we're in this mainstream adoption phase, and then it's hyper Bitcoinization by 2030. I don't see that happening, fortunately or unfortunately. And the one thing I think we have to do, I want to see, again, I always say this isn't financial advice, but I want to see as many people who are poor and need Bitcoin get Bitcoin, because I think too many
Yeah.
Bitcoiners are like, they say things about Bitcoin, but quietly they're kind of sitting back. They're like, I can't wait to stack this, and wow, I'm going to be so rich. Like I know that's what they're thinking. Meanwhile, these other people don't have access to Bitcoin, and I think they'll still benefit at whatever price. But I'd like to see them stack or be given and taught how to hold Bitcoin as much as possible. So if you have Bitcoin, like give it to people who need it, and teach them how to hold it. It'll change their life.
Yeah, Bitcoin is distributed, but knowledge is not. So if
Yeah.
before the money was the privilege, now knowing is the privilege. There are some
Hmm.
people, of
Hmm.
course, everyone can buy Bitcoin peer to peer. Of course, everyone can on paper. How do a person in Africa that knows nothing about it will ever known that they can buy Bitcoin? So when we keep it for ourselves, we're doing the same things that the fiat system since forever.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
no different. Just because it's not accessible, it's not fully distributed on a knowledge perspective.
Another thing that makes me wonder, I mean, I really like those niche of Bitcoiners that they think the dollar is going to collapse fast, and the Armageddon is upon us,
Hmm.
and in 10-15 years we're gonna have citadels, and Bitcoin citadels are going to be the only safe heavens on earth
Hmm.
because everything is about to collapse. Bro, obviously you never left your tiny bedroom in a very privileged part of the world, because if you
Hmm.
travel around you realize that things are so slow.
Yeah.
We just came back from Lebanon defaulted on their debt in 2021. 260% inflation on an annual basis, the Lebanese lira. The state there is not there
It's
any
not. Yeah.
is not there anymore. As we speak,
Hmm.
the prime minister is vacant, the president of the Lebanese Republic is vacant, and the president of the Lebanese central bank is
It's the
vacant,
paradise.
and has been vacant for
Yeah.
1 year now. All public offices are closed. The electric grid provides 3/4 hours of electricity, period,
A day.
a
Hmm.
day. and and still people manage. They do things peer to peer. They have their own power
You buy
generator.
me a car, I give you the keys, you give me the money, we're good. Of course, it's not scalable,
It's not, yeah, of course, it's not
but
scalable.
like people are going out, drinking, eating, having
Oh, yeah.
fun, living their life, working. Private companies are, they're using their brain. They manage to survive. They even, realize how to make business better. So it's not that everyone is just there on the street, desperate,
Panicking
killing
or
each other. They're just doing okay. Of course, could be better, but
an entire economic system based on a fiat currency, I'm sorry guys, does not collapse from day to night. And to be honest with
I don't
you,
wish for it.
exactly, we should be happy, because if the dollars dies quickly, that means a lot of people is gonna get hurt. That means
Hmm.
we're gonna have decades of social unrest and probably war. I don't wish that. I
No.
want a slow transition. And I want, as you said, a lot of new human beings to discover Bitcoin and
Hmm.
jump on board
Organically.
organic.
It's like the iPod,
Yeah.
You used to listen music to the CD. Now you just bought your first MP3 and you are using the internet as an alternative for listening to music that is still
Hmm.
there. It's just obsolete, but you can always use your
Yeah.
old CD player to
As
listen
you
to
said,
music.
I have the impression that who wants the dollar to collapse quickly wants to have a privilege himself, wants to be
Yeah.
rich fast. And if you think about it, that's so
So
fiat.
fiat.
That's so fucking fiat. I mean, you're not a Bitcoiner, you are a fiat coiner. You just want your privilege to be the new privilege.
Yeah,
So
you
you are
didn't get.
shifting,
Hmm.
you are advocating for a shift from one privilege to another, and that's so fucking fiat.
And that's also fiat when you just hold your Bitcoin and you don't use them. I mean, if you're just
Yeah.
using fiat, to me, you're supporting the fiat system, you're supporting fiat merchants, you're supporting your bank account, you're supporting your
Hmm.
boss that pays you in fiat. That's it. If you want to
Hmm.
gain Bitcoin, you teach Bitcoin to your boss, you only support Bitcoin merchants. You, for yourself, choose to have privacy already on your bank account. That's Bitcoin. All the rest is fiat. Living with fiat is
Yeah.
fiat.
If you, I mean, it is. If you use your credit card, you are paying fees to MasterCard,
Yeah, you're
Visa,
supporting
American
that.
Express. That means you are proactively supporting the fiat economy and fiat payment system. Period.
Hmm.
Prove me wrong, bro.
Even asking to, we do that when we can, all the time. Can we pay with Bitcoin? Can I pay with Bitcoin? Maybe they don't accept it already, but they go home and they think about the crazy person in the taxi that talked about Bitcoin. I'm not gonna orange
Yeah.
pill
Yeah.
all of them like that. I'm not gonna orange pill the world like that. But I want to help someone. Someone will be, oh, this Bitcoin thing. Someone asked me to pay on a taxi with Bitcoin. Maybe I should learn more about it. If I have time, maybe I will never do it, but it's for sure more helpful than not spending any.
If there is one merchant in your area
Mm.
that accepts Bitcoin, guys,
Go
he
there.
is a pioneer.
Yeah.
Why
Hmm.
don't you want to support someone that is pioneering? And I'm not saying buy a car. Go there and buy one beer in Bitcoin a month.
Let
I'm
it.
not
Hmm.
saying, give up to your stock. Nobody. We are all stocking. We are all saving in Bitcoin. But come on, can't you afford to spend 30,000 sats per month to support
Hmm.
someone that is the first in your neighborhood accepting Bitcoin? This is so retarded. I can really,
Hmm.
it makes my mind melt.
And let all the others competitors see that people are going there just because they accept Bitcoin. This is huge. This is
Hmm.
the free market. You give a better service, I come there. I copy you.
Yeah. And I don't think he'd be listening to this, but even if he is, he can hit me up. There's a guy in my town. I know he's a Bitcoiner. We've gone to meetups together, and I've talked to him about like, let's do this. Let's and he owns a local place downtown. I'm like, start accepting Bitcoin. Like, what are we doing here? He's like, oh yeah, I want to this and that. And just, some people are like, especially businesses, and his business is doing very well. Just I think concerned about the logistics, concerned about tax implications, and those type of things. It can be complicated, but nowadays too, at least in the U.S., there are a lot of services, even the mainstream like financial institutions that do tax returns for businesses and stuff. They all are on the same page with like it's if it's a way to make money for them, like collecting fees and stuff to do it, they'll do it. So they're all processing tax returns for Bitcoin. This podcast is like an LLC. I do it pretty easily with some of the main institutions. Like it's not that hard. So if you're also a Bitcoiner and you kind of know what you're doing, there's no excuse. I don't mean you have to set up a BTC Pay server and do like your own thing. There's some ways to do it that are maybe a
Strike.
bit more
I mean, it's
centralized, but
easy.
then you can just withdraw to your own wallet. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
even having a tough time with Bitcoiners I do know that do have businesses doing that. I don't know if it's a mix of perception. I really, really wish, and hopefully one day soon, like Cash App and Square, which is huge in the US. I don't know if they have a presence in Europe at all. Actually, I don't
No,
know.
No.
they don't.
I didn't think so. Yeah, yeah. So like Square is like everywhere for like cafes and small businesses in the US. I'm like, man, if they could just have a separate rail, pay with Bitcoin. And I know people have asked all the time, Jack, when? But so much of Cash App, I know Jack's a Bitcoiner, but so much of Cash App and Square is based on using those fiat payment rails. So they're going to have a lot of resistance to being able to build that into their software, their application for that. I think it will happen, maybe especially after the ETFs. But I'm like, the more we can get merchants, that's when we'll see another uptick. Is like when these institutions, these payment processors are just like, okay, we accept Bitcoin through our terminals. You hear it here and there, like, oh, this gas station chain is accepting Bitcoin. And it's like you look it up, and there's like 30 gas stations in like Oklahoma that use that. It's like that's cool, that's a start. But my point being, like, it's such a lift, I think, for some people to think through accepting that. But you're right, just starting small, just going and doing your part in those ways. And also it's like fun. You're thinking, I'm not going to support these credit card fees. That's a cool way to think about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
also, let's discuss technology and development. For example, yeah, I know some Bitcoiners, they don't like the Lightning Network. Personally, I love it. I use it on
Mhm,
a daily basis. Without the Lightning Network, our travels
Wouldn't be
were
possible.
absolutely impossible.
mhm,
So I think the Lightning Network is a great technology, and I'm very glad there is so much development on the Lightning Network and on all other protocols. But let's discuss the Lightning Network. All the companies that are paying developers to improve the Lightning Network, that wants to offer, that wants to be Lightning service providers, all their business models literally is based on fees. So
mhm,
if we don't transact on this damn Lightning Network, those companies are not gonna have revenue. And if they don't have revenues, they cannot pay for development. And that means that the technology is gonna start to advance at a slower pace. And I
mhm,
think as Bitcoiners, we we don't want this to happen. So think about if every human being that has Bitcoin would transact $1, 3,000, I don't know how much is today, 3,000 sats per
mhm,
month, we would have a huge liquidity on the Lightning Network. And that means a more sustainable business for all these companies that are advancing the technology that we use every day. So it's a no-brainer. It's just a small transaction. First of all, it's fun. I meet
mhm,
Bitcoiner that they never did a single transaction on the Lightning Network, and I don't understand. It's so much fun to send sats
mhm.
That's
instantly.
fun for nerds, baby.
I
It's not
know
for
maybe we're nerds, but
I'm
I
joking.
guess a big chunk of Bitcoiners they should be nerds. But and you want to
Yeah.
know new apps. I don't know how many Lightning or wallets we have, because this is
Hmm.
exciting new technology. Why we should not own them? And
Hmm.
there is another niche of Bitcoiners. I call those the investors, and and usually they answer, no way, I'm not gonna spend one single sat because Bitcoin is gonna go up to 1 million, and I don't want to be I don't want to end up like the idiot guy of the
Yeah, the
pizza.
one that we remember every year
Exactly,
since
the one that made
Hmm.
history, the
history.
one that made history with the first Bitcoin transaction. But if you
Yeah.
think about it, even from an investor perspective, this is so retarded, because Bitcoin is both a protocol and a unit of account, 21 million Bitcoin. So, protocol and coins.
Hmm.
If the protocol is the product, and we can call the coins shares of
Stock.
a
Yeah.
stocks of a
Hmm.
company, and the product that the company sells is the protocol. So if you own stocks of a company, you want the product to be successful, right? Who is
Hmm.
Warren Buffett that
I drink
says, I
a
drink a
Coca-Cola.
Coke every morning, and is the single biggest shareholders, right? It's so
Yeah.
retarded. It's like you own Apple stocks and you buy Samsung phone for Christmas to every member of your family. This is so retarded. So using the protocol a little bit, it's an investment that it's gonna make your stock more valuable on in the long run. So for
Hmm.
me, hodl to death, it's just obsolete. It made sense back in 2014, 2015. Bitcoin was small, needed to be protected. Hodl, let's hodl, because Bitcoin is young.
Because the alternative was selling,
Exactly.
not using it. The alternative back
Hmm.
then was selling it. Don't sell your bit, don't panic sell your Bitcoin.
Exactly. If
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
actually
Yeah.
read the forum where the meme starts, is not don't spend your Bitcoin. Is don't panic sell when Bitcoin crashes. So we
Hmm.
got this hodl thing completely wrong. And nowadays, we are in 2023. We have a second layer that works as a charm. We are working on side layers. We have so many protocols, and all those protocols, they are made to use Bitcoin. So
Hmm.
let's just use a little Bitcoin in our daily life and replace them right after.
Or
It's
find
so
a way
easy.
to earn them, which is even better.
Yeah, but if you earn
Yeah.
them and you don't spend them,
No, no, that's no,
so
of course.
But at least that takes out the initial payment rail, right? So in the US, we have these like direct deposit forms, and Strike can do that, where you can fill
Yeah.
out a direct deposit form with like Strike or Cash App, submit it to your employer if you have a regular paycheck that comes in, and 100% or whatever portion you say will go right to your whatever account. And then you can withdraw to self custody, or whatever. So that at least takes out one payment rail. But yeah, I would say, maybe it's because I don't interact with many, but the growing number of Bitcoiners who are, there are some people, I forget the guy's name. I think he was big on the drivetrain thing. But anyway, put out a recent post again about like Lightning Network is nothing. It doesn't produce anything, and this and that. And the one thing, no, I think there are some Lightning wallets or Lightning apps this past year that have sometimes, if someone's not going to use a Lightning wallet if it takes 2 minutes to load, right? If it takes like a while and you're trying to like quickly interact, there are some that take a little bit. I think I'm really like bullish on like Zeus Wallet, that team, and then Mutiny. I've seen, and the really revolutionary thing that I've been starting to see, because I when I first got into Bitcoin, I did this weird thing where I like did a deep dive, and I wanted to like try to, and I don't have a tech background or anything, but I got like my own node and Raspberry Pi and try to learn how to do all this. I fumbled through and I was like, oh my God, I like effed this up so bad. So I jumped on like this Reddit forum and just started like asking questions, and people like walked me through step by step, like put this in, like put this code in, press enter, like, whatever. So I figured it out. But nowadays, you don't have to run a node like that to be self custodial Lightning. Like Zeus has created and found a way that there's a meme on Nostr that's big right now. The node is in your phone. So it's like, so we're saying like, is there a node in the room with you? Like this, the therapist sitting on the couch, that kind of thing. So people can run their own node that's started up on your phone. And that increases the privacy enhancement, because sometimes you can run a node from home. And if it's not set up right, that's not very private. You have to rely on your home network and your internet service provider. If your electricity goes, there's so many things where kind of the tech blows out, your Raspberry Pi crashes, whatever. Nowadays, it's as easy as opening that up. You can open a node like on your phone. And I'm like, that is the way Lightning, I think, is meant to be. You can have a
Yeah,
burner phone, like Lightning node. Like if you're an activist, like you can have a burner phone and then open up, your own, spin up your own node with that. And even without the node, there's also self custodial ways where you can at least have, your 12 words to own it, that kind of thing. But we're seeing like crazy developments in Lightning that I'm like,
absolutely.
oh, now we're at the
Absolutely.
point where this thing is really going. Yeah.
Absolutely. And still, to be honest with you, I get it. But I mean, do we need to be self sovereign every single second of our lives? What I'm
No.
trying to say here is that the way I see my Lightning wallet is like my physical wallet. When I take
Hmm.
cash, when I keep my cash, and I'm gonna need that cash tonight. I'm not gonna put my life savings in my wallet before I hit the streets here in Milan. This is the
Hmm.
way I see. There are some custodial wallets. They work very well. And if we keep in those wallets just,
100,
little
200.
sad, what's the problem? What's the point? I am
Hmm.
all pro non-custodial app. But if there's a custodial service that works well, and you keep just few 100,000 sats on that, bro, no problem.
Hmm.
Something is gonna happen. Yes, are you going to lose those sats? Yes, but how much is that? It's exactly like if you get if a pickpocket if a pickpocket steal your wallet
On the
while you
subway.
walk on the street. Yeah, I've lost $100. Not funny, I get it, but it
Hmm.
is what it is. Life sucks sometimes.
And they are super good when you want to arrange bill a person. You will never arrange bill a
Yeah.
person with Zeus ever. You
Yes,
have to for this. Blink is my favorite. They just download
Yeah.
them. They put their phone number. They're ready to receive subs. You do this
Hmm.
with your taxi driver, with the waiter at the restaurant, with the guy you're talking
yes.
to at the train station. They are perfect for arrange billing, of course. The app itself has a section when they can learn about Bitcoin, and that says don't keep your money here, self custody your life savings. I mean, the
Yeah.
point of this is just
First you have to show them Bitcoin, and then they're gonna get it. They're gonna get to self custody and stuff like that. But we have
Hmm.
to be careful. I give you one quick example. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Lugano for the Plan B Forum
Hmm.
conference, and there was a meetup of Bitcoiner the night before the conference in a bar. I was waiting, it was late. I was waiting in line to buy me another gin tonic, and there was this guy in front of me paying with Bitcoin, and the transaction was so slow, very slow. I was, to be honest, shocked to see a Bitcoin transaction on the Lightning Network so slow. And I was
Hmm.
talking to the owner of the bar, and he was saying, this is too slow. I have another club. Sometimes it's packed like this. There's no way I'm gonna be able to put this kind of payment in that club because it's too slow. This is too
Hmm.
slow. And I asked, I got to be honest with you, it was very slow. So I asked the guy, listen, bro, what are you using? Why is your Lightning payment taking 4 minutes? And he
Yeah.
goes, yeah, because you know what? Yeah, I have Zeus
on my
on my
node,
node
on Tor.
on Tor. And I look at the guy
Yeah.
and I tell them, bro,
It'll be ready by Christmas. Like,
this is how we onboard merchants, though.
mhm.
This is how we onboard more merchant. This is how we drive merchants away from Bitcoin. To protect what? The privacy of your gin tonic? Come on, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense like this.
There's a compromise,
Yeah.
Phoenix is great,
Breeze
Mhm.
is
Breeze
great.
is great, but sometimes I mean,
Zeus under with your own node and Thor,
it's just too
maybe it's a
much
little bit too much, bro.
Yeah.
for
Yeah, it
Lightning.
really
I
depends.
mean,
Yeah, that's the thing, and I think that's such a good point because I like on Nostr. The one of the reasons I like Nostr is because there's Zaps. Like it's great for content creators, whatever. And so I use Albi on Nostr, and I've tried to incorporate some of the other wallets to Zaps, and it's either it fails or it's too slow. And like I hope they and I think they are getting to a place. But right now, I'm like, I want to send a quick Zap. Albi's working, and there's like this desktop browser, and I
yeah.
can see like if I lose my like $50 in Sats on Albi, I'm not going to lose sleep over that. So I know that. And another thing I want to bring up because it was part of my own story, like I think there's a fear amongst Bitcoiners that if they don't start off like self-custodial with everything and self-sovereign that they just won't ever get to it. And I'm like, that's the furthest thing from the truth. My own journey is like I'm pretty sure I first bought Bitcoin in 2021 when it came back down to like 30,000 or something like that. Just coincidental, by the way. I don't think I was like, I'm going to wait for it. I think it was just the timing of it. I was like, okay, this is something I want to kind of get into more. I also bought a little ETH at the time because I was like, it's cheaper. And I've heard this so many times. Like a month later, I sold it though. I was like, this is ridiculous. So then I was Bitcoin only, but I bought it on Coinbase. And then from there, I was like, I want to actually like own this though. I want to actually have it in my life. I learned after that. I wasn't like Coinbase is easy and great to use. I'm going to keep it there. I first got into it there and then I went into, okay, I want to hold it in cold storage. I want to do this. I learned from there. So I think the notion that people will buy from the centralized exchange and then just keep it there because it's easier or keep it like that's actually not true. I think most people start off in one of those forms and then grow more self sovereign. Like you don't have to start off self-sovereign right away. But what I like what you mentioned, I'm not sure which wallet you were talking about that also says, the possible risks, right? Or the you should own this, or you should have a app where you have the seed phrase where you can restore your balance, like things like that. They say, this is centralized, but we encourage you to withdraw,
Yeah,
or these are the other things you can learn. That's great. If someone's saying, okay, like if Wallet of Satoshi, which they haven't to the best of my knowledge, that works really, really well as a Lightning app. But they're like, put all of your Bitcoin on here. It's completely yours. It's safe. There's no way in hell that any government or we can rug you like that. That's just not true, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
just about people being aware of what it is they're
yeah,
using.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, if you're going out to a bar, I've been to meetups before, and yeah, they're doing the same thing, and I'm like, or I've actually done it where I open up one of these like cool new apps and I'm like, this isn't working. Let me go back to Strike, or let me go back to my Cash App, or let me go back to Wallet of Satoshi and just pay because I'm just trying to like, donate to this meetup. I've done that like 5 different times where I'm like, let me go back to Wallet of Satoshi because this isn't working right now. And there isn't a long line, right? It's just like if it's taking more than like 15 seconds, listen, my Visa does it faster. And that's the
Exactly.
way
Yeah,
that
yeah.
99% of the world thinks. And I think Bitcoiners need to hear that more, and it's being said more and more. This does not mean never do self-custodial options or self-sovereign options, but it means like, what is the point of Lightning? It's for fast, easy payments, and like that pisses me off about that bar owner, the restaurant owner, saying like, oh, I wouldn't want to use this. Man, that's such a bad intro to Bitcoin. Like that's crazy.
There is a way if every person that goes on the street, every content creators like Joe, Paco, us, even Carl and Walker, try to
Yeah,
arrange a lot of people. They all use custodial wallet and they all take a lot of shit from Twitter,
Joe, especially
from
I
other
saw
Hardcore.
people.
recently.
It's not that we're stupid, it's just that we've been doing a lot and they just are slow. They don't work most of the time. You don't know why a transactions didn't go through. We as Bitcoiner can accept that, but if something like that happens on PayPal, I mean, I will freak out. I would like, why
Mhm.
it's not working? So we all end up using custodial wallet for day by day orange peeling. That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
this
I mean,
is
these
how
people
it
are
is.
sitting back in their like, citadels in the United States or whatever, or wherever they live, just like tweeting about you all doing incredible work, actually going out there and talking to people about Bitcoin or using Bitcoin. It's like that's right now some of the most important work that can be done. That and activists in Togo using Bitcoin. Like these are some of the things, or like education ecosystems in high schools in El Salvador. Like that is what it's about right now. Like if the US is the last place on earth to get Bitcoin, I'm fine with that.
Mm-mm.
The world the US has benefited from the exploitation of everyone else. So let's start with everyone else with the people's money with Bitcoin. So these people trolling, I'm just like that's why Twitter is just frustrating. It's just like I know you all and Joe and everyone knows to just ignore it, but it's
Yeah.
super frustrating. And I forgot who it was. Oh my gosh, I don't want to get the person's name wrong, but someone came after Joe recently, maybe like a month ago or
Oh
so,
yeah.
about using Lightning or about like like a shop accepting Lightning or Bitcoin and be like that's not the way for mass adoption. That's nothing with Bitcoin, and I'm like, fuck you. Like it kind of is. Like I know it's small right now, but like the videos I'm showing my normie friends or the conversations I'm talking about when they're like, "Oh, you do a crypto podcast. What's that about?" I say, well, it's about Bitcoin. And then I say, listen to this human rights activists. This is what they're doing with Bitcoin. Oh, cool. Like I showed my wife like a video of you guys yesterday. Just about look at
Oh.
this cool. Like we love to travel. They're traveling. This is cool. So it's like incorporating fun things that you all like to do in general and adding Bitcoin to that, being like, this is the real world and this is how Bitcoin fits in. That's mass adoption to me. Not talking about Bitcoin is eternal energy. Here's this like AI graphic on Twitter. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not gonna be shit. It's crazy.
It's true. It's true, and nothing of what we do would be possible without the Lightning Network.
Yeah.
We found ourselves 2 years ago in El Salvador, late 2021. Chivo Lightning on Chivo was not working, so we were stuck with on-chain transaction. That was a nightmare. A
Yeah.
nightmare. We were trying to buy food in a grocery store, and the line behind us was huge because Bitcoin was not confirming that damn block, and I was keep
Hmm.
replacing by fee on my wallet. I think I spent $10 in fee just because
Just
I
on fees
really
to yeah.
wanted to be on the next block. So if we want local communities to start experimenting with alternative forms of economy build on Bitcoin, instant settlements are needed. There's no way you're going to be able to start a local community or a local grassroots economy without the Lightning Network and the top layers that we're going to build in the
Hmm.
future. So that's it. Lightning is Bitcoin and Bitcoin is Lightning, period.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that, people traveling around the world and using it. And what's beautiful about Lightning and the work you all are doing, like, I mean, like, I get a little jealous. I told my wife that I was like, man, if I could just, I want to go down to El Salvador and like, shoot a podcast and stuff. And I actually want to at some point, and we will. But you're doing these things that are really fun, right? It probably brings so much joy to, oddly, I would probably say, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, you're going to a place like Lebanon where, as you put it, and I thought the same way about Argentina, right? In the US, we're obsessed with like talking, Bitcoiners are obsessed with talking about like inflation and saying, oh my, like, so with the picture of like Argentina, which isn't even as bad as Lebanon in terms of inflation, we would think that people are like starving and it's like The Walking Dead or something. It's just like, how are these people even functioning? They're dying by the millions every day, clearly. I actually think Peter McCormack, to his credit, says something like they're still like going out to eat. They're still like doing their thing. They're just figuring out a way to do it. There's more like gray market cash exchanges. There's, they're updating restaurant prices all the time. I think you all talked about this in Turkey as well, in one of your videos. So these places are still going on. And I bet even in a place like Lebanon, the US, we just cast everything in our major newspapers, New York Times, we always cast everything as, wow, it must be so depressing. It must be so dark to live anywhere in Africa. Or in Lebanon, there's no joy. They have no 401k. How can they be happy? You know, all of these stupid, crazy things. But I'm sure in Lebanon, just using Bitcoin and doing different things, it's also just fun. And you see like hope and joy, not because there's just this level of like despair. There is, but it's like seeing people figure things out. It makes me feel incredibly hopeful about like humanity. We always are
Yeah,
Absolutely.
figuring things
yeah, yeah,
out.
yeah.
That's incredible.
Absolutely. The resilience human beings have, sometimes it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
One mind blowing moment we had recently was in Turkey, when we realized that, for example, low income classes, low income family, they use bottles of detergent as a store of value. Literally,
Wow. Mm.
bottles and bottles of detergent. Detergent is perfect because it's very useful. Everyone needs it. It does not expire. So you
Mhm.
can just buy it today, store it home, and sell it tomorrow in your neighborhood or online.
Mhm.
So they have all these forms of peer to peer economy based on goods that they find are a good alternative to an hyperinflating local currency. So when you see things like this, you really understand that human beings are probably the most resilient thing on earth, and
Mm.
that's fantastic. So eventually they're all going to understand and find Bitcoin on their path. It's just a matter of
Mhm.
time. If we can effectively teach them, it's gonna happen just
Yeah.
way much faster.
Mhm. Yeah, and I wanna before we wrap up too much, I wanna ask a fun question because even outside of Bitcoin, I love traveling. I love, these things. So I'm curious, even Bitcoin aside, or it can involve Bitcoin, for both of you individually, what would you say is maybe one or the top 2 places that you've traveled that you just really enjoy going to these places? I know you're both based out of Milan. Where do you really enjoy traveling to? Or what's been one of your favorite cities to go to?
I think the highlights for the last year for us was Guatemala. I would never
Mm.
go. I don't know, but I went to Guatemala just for Bitcoin, and I was very surprised on how beautiful it is. Everyone is now
Mhm.
going to El Salvador, but Guatemala is just like El Salvador, just a little further, and it's beautiful. The vegetation there, it's amazing. The beaches are cool, and the lake, the Bitcoin lake, it's just so
Mhm.
much fun. It's a place where you will go on vacation with your family and your friend, and it's full on Bitcoin friendly. Like you can live in Bitcoin there. The community is from the bottom up. It's super cool. So I think Guatemala is definitely one of our highlights.
Yeah. See, it's a lovely country and very close to El Salvador. Everyone goes to El Salvador, but
Mhm.
Panajachel, that is the city where the Bitcoin Lake is a big touristic city. So the Bitcoin Beach is cool, of course, but it's a very small village. In the
Mhm.
Bitcoin Lake, you can really enjoy your holiday. You can do everything there in Bitcoin. There are clubs playing music up until very late. You can get drunk and dance and pay in Bitcoin. We did paragliding all over the lake and paid
Mhm.
for it in
The
Bitcoin.
boat.
You can rent a boat. There's the Bitcoin tuk tuk, all sorts of restaurants, bars, hostels, and hotels. So it's a fantastic touristic venue. For Bitcoiners, and this is a shout out, Bitcoiners out there. I know you have a wife that doesn't give a shit about Bitcoin and gets very bored when you talk about Bitcoin.
Or a
Perfect.
husband because we're progressive
Or a
here.
husband because we're progressive. Absolutely. Perfect. You have to go to Panajachel. She or he are going to
For them,
enjoy a normal holidays, and you can do Bitcoin meanwhile.
Mm.
So it's the perfect holiday venue. Yeah.
That's the life hack. I do want to ask one more question. This is towards Laura. So, in your thoughts on Bitcoin, is even our audience, right? Our YouTube stats are like, it's so funny. I don't know how they get these stats, but it's just so male dominated. Everything in Bitcoin, just finance in general, all of this, like,
Yeah, yeah,
understandable,
technology and
is
finance.
yeah, all of that. So, I mean, first of all, if there are like women listening, like we need more like Bitcoin podcasts, but also like women-led podcasts, like all of these things to appeal to women. What are your thoughts on whether it's talking with friends, like female friends of yours, other like women content creators and folks in the space? Unfortunately, there's like I can feel like I can count some of the major ones on my hands, or maybe one hand, in terms of the that are out there. What are your thoughts on how in this male-dominated space we get more women involved in Bitcoin, like either speaking up or seeing it as relevant or something that either they would be interested in? I'm curious your thoughts on this.
First at all, I'm very proud of my friends because, for example, they get Bitcoin slower but so much better than the male friends. Every male friends of mine, they came back after a month that they bought Bitcoin, they bought all the shitcoin that they could find. All my girlfriends, they never literally did it. They bought themselves another wallet. They're staking sats every month. So I can see this difference. I think women do get the store of value concept a lot. This is something that we saw in Turkey. Mothers,
Mm,
at the end of the day, in Turkey, they just go, they buy gold for the family to protect the life savings, etc., etc. So I think women do have the Bitcoin mindset. It's just that they think it's a technology and finance thing, so it's not
mhm,
very easy now to get more women involved. But I think, yeah, we should just change, as we said before, the way we speak about it. I am trying on my little to speak about Bitcoin to my girlfriends on Instagram. We should teach feminists that Bitcoin is the perfect tool for to protect women rights all around the world.
mhm,
We just need to tune the Bitcoin narrative a little bit more on women. It could be anything. We love, yeah, we love freedom. We want to have our own, self sovereign bank account that is not in
mhm.
bank but it's in Bitcoin. I think it just need a lot. I would just need a lot of time. Yeah, time and patience. But I'm very happy of what I'm
And
seeing.
we need to orange peel Kim Kardashian.
Yeah,
That would help a lot.
Taylor Swift,
Uh,
That would help a
oh,
Selena
lot.
I
Gomez.
joked with my wife last night about Taylor Swift. Oh, someone's like, "Oh, have Taylor Swift on your podcast." I was like, "Oh, right, I'll get right on it." Like, what are you talking
She's
about?
huge.
Yeah, so it sounds trivial, but yeah, so far a lot of these celebrities got roasted with FTX, right? So I'm like, I wonder if it's not the craziest thing. Another thing I wanted to touch on, I had a guest on recently, and I won't reveal who because people have to listen to the episode to find out. But she was talking about, and she was very open on the podcast, talking about going through. This is someone in the U.S. going through a recent divorce, and they were, as a woman, she was with a very successful man, and was worried about how do I protect my wealth? How do I have like a future, like in terms of these things? And started getting into Bitcoin, and then she started spreading that to her close group of like female friends about like owning your sovereignty. And that's in the US. Like I've heard stories of like Afghani women who don't have access to bank accounts. It's great for having those conversations about women in other nations that they can't have access to property or money without their male counterpart or father or whatever. But even in the
Yeah,
US, there's like domestic
Absolutely.
violence. There's
Absolutely.
women who are like, what do I do without my
Yeah.
husband's wealth because of our patriarchal system? And that's just how it was or
Yeah.
is in their family. Having Bitcoin and then seeing it go up in price, just that practical nature of like, are you concerned about what do I do if my husband's not here? Are you concerned about you're in this unhealthy marriage or relationship, but you're just staying in it because you don't know what else to do? Bitcoin can be an answer for that,
yeah,
or start
Absolutely.
investing in that. And I was blown away by that, just hearing that this person is a person of privilege in the United States, bigger in the space. And at that time, they were terrified, and were like, "What
we
do I
we
do?" And Bitcoin helped them feel more like take a deep breath and say everything's going to be okay. Like I have a future now. And that was like incredible to hear.
Yeah. Statistically, the vast majority of unbanked in the world are women. So that's
Mm-hmm.
that's absolutely. But even as you said in the US, one of our favorite custom made T-shirt has the hashtag Free Britney on it,
I was
and
going to bring that up too. Are you wearing it?
and there
Nice.
is,
Yeah.
and there is the Bitcoin B. Britney is with the Bitcoin B.
Yeah.
So okay, as Bitcoiner, we should advocate for free Ross, but also free Britney was important. Think about it. If we could have orange pilled Britney Spears
10
back in
years
the
ago.
days, 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
that would have been huge for her
And the fan base.
and for
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin awareness all over the US and the Western world. There are so many use cases, so many use cases.
Yeah. I mean, we could spend all day talking about
Yeah.
use cases. And that's what I just trying to do more and more of, and was so looking forward to chatting with you guys because I knew it would be centered around this. And I want more normies to stumble upon our podcast. I mean, there's two words in our podcast that I always go back and forth with that turn people off: progressive and Bitcoiner. So it's like some people are like, I'm not going to listen to anything progressive means Elizabeth Warren. Well, we're
Whoa.
trying to help people realize it's one of the biggest like uh, camps ever. That kind of group of leftist, whatever, and then Bitcoiner. So I'm intentional about using that, but it does like turn people off. So, but I'm hoping that more and more normies tune in based on how we advertise who we're talking to and what
We
we're
appreciate
talking
your
about.
courage a lot.
And this next cycle is gonna be huge.
Yeah,
It's
I think
always.
so.
I mean, when there is a new disruptive technology like Bitcoin, the early days are, of course, for geeks and nerds
Hmm.
or very small political niches, like for Bitcoin was the ANCAP world or the ultra right wing libertarian. If you think about it, exactly the same happened with the internet in the early
Hmm.
days.
Yeah,
Because
I use that comparison a lot.
it's such a new concept, and who's gonna find out about it if not
Hmm.
geeks, nerds, and
Sociopaths.
extremist sociopath or extremists?
Hmm.
But the more a technology grows, the more a technology scale, the more people we onboard. Those new guys that are gonna come and uh, and understand Bitcoin in the next few years, they're gonna just be the average guy on the street. Thank
Hmm.
God, because we
Yeah.
need that.
Yeah, they're
We
funnier.
we need those people as well. So the more we grow, the
Did you say they're
less.
funnier, Laura?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bitcoiners aren't that funny. Yeah,
No, not at
Well,
I know.
all.
I say
Not
that
at
all
all.
the time.
Not
So
at all.
some of my favorite people, it's like connecting with you guys. I tell my wife this all the time, and I was like, there's like, I mean, the number's growing, but I'm like, oh, there's genuinely some people in the Bitcoin space I'd be like, oh, I think I'd be friends with in real life. That's the number I want to see like growing, because there's a lot of
Exactly.
like
yes.
Bitcoiners. I'm like, okay, nerd out about Bitcoin or some meetups and stuff, but honestly, I'm like, well, most of my friends aren't that. Like my friends, we have different values or cultural values, or we go to vegan restaurants or political stuff, or we like traveling in Europe or Paris or wherever. So it's like those values, we're going to see more and more of that coming in. And one other group that I'm still just waiting for different groups and social movements to get into Bitcoin, like the LGBTQIA group. Like there's so many other groups that I think have yet to really find and harness Bitcoin.
The climate change
That we're gonna see.
activists.
Yeah, I'm so waiting for that too. Especially anytime I see. I mean, the joke is anytime someone paints like a building like orange, right? Especially in Europe and England, these climate movements, I'm like, they're close. They're in the right color. Let's
And
figure
what
this
are we
out.
doing? Rather than welcoming them, we're insulting them all the time
Yeah,
on
Woke.
Twitter. Like, what the heck? Who cares? Like, they're with us. We're playing the same game. We want to
yeah.
fuck the same system.
We're
No,
against the same
woke.
systems. Exactly.
like, oh,
Because a lot of Bitcoiners keep forgetting that Bitcoin is freedom, and freedom means that it's for everyone, and it doesn't matter what you think about the
yeah,
rest.
and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So let's do this thing together rather than
Yeah.
insulting everyone that is not the maxima. We call them maxima priests.
Maxima priests.
So like
That's how we
Mhm.
call them.
the
Maxima priest, I like
carnivore
that.
maximalist,
Or Bitcoin
and
Hamish.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
up to you.
Yeah,
let's
they're
try
like
be
in the
more
US it's
welcoming.
like yeah, it's like homesteaders. So it's like, yeah, why are you're saying you're a freedom maximist. There's a few, I won't mention them by name. I mean, it's fine, but that are self-described freedom maximalists, but I'm like you're borderline white Christian national like in the United States. Like you're very fundamentally religious. That's fine. But stop saying that your goal is freedom maximalism in Bitcoin because that's not what that is. That's something else. So you need to be welcoming of all groups. Like sure, like live and let live. Like, can we get back to that understanding? And that's kind of the liberal left camp I come from. So it's funny that some on the right in Bitcoin in the US are like, yeah, that, but no, you have to homeschool your kids, you have to be a carnivore, you have to be
Don't wear sun
religious.
cream.
You know, if you're a homosexual couple, that doesn't count. You know, all of this stuff is just like, guys, what is going on? And luckily those voices are getting more and more quiet, or they're at least shutting up about it because they're realizing, oh, they're getting a lot more shit than they used to when they say certain things. So we're trending in the right direction. And last thing I'll say, because people always bring this up, it's not about making Bitcoin for the gay community or Bitcoin is progressive or liberal. It's like I'm putting these labels on things because so many in the community and mainstream media too have made it seem like Bitcoin is only for X group, especially in the West, right? So trying to, the more we bring in all of these groups, the
Mm,
less it'll be viewed as for this one particular camp. So it's like we have to be vocal about intentionally recruiting people so that then we can back off and just say, all right, it's just a tool. It's just money.
yeah.
It's just better money. It's that better tool that we're all trying to get to. But we got to be intentional to make that happen.
Yeah, Bitcoin is not for the LGBT community, but we know we do need an LGBT leader bringing Bitcoin in the community. We do
Yeah,
need
exactly.
a page that talks to LGBT people about Bitcoin and how to use
Hmm.
it, on why to use it, etc., etc., etc. So we need a more decentralized, centralized community,
Yeah.
vertical in one topic that talk to a specific niche:
Yeah.
climate change, LGBT
Hmm.
people, feminist. I don't care if I don't agree with them. I don't care if I think they're
Yeah.
wrong.
It's
I
okay.
want them to have
Yeah,
every
exactly.
tool and knowledge
It's
necessary
okay.
to onboard more people on Bitcoin.
It's
Hmm.
the, don't tread on me, but let me tread on you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, let's just stick with the first one. Yeah. Awesome. Gosh, we could keep talking forever. This was so great. I really hope a lot of folks listen to this episode. I think, you know, in addition to you guys are producing like great and fun content, you're also really smart just about how you think about Bitcoin, both of you, and can appeal to so many different people. So, you know, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you,
on the
Thank
Trey.
show,
you.
It's
for
been
doing this.
fun.
Yeah, and I want to make sure, you know, obviously, you know, your handles on social media and all of that we'll put in the show notes, but what do you guys have coming up in terms of any travels, whether it's, you know, soon or in the next year? What are some things you're up to?
Now we've been in Milan for the last couple of weeks. We're doing events and conferences here in Milan, but Africa is next. So we're gonna
Awesome.
leave for Africa in the next few weeks, and we're gonna be. I think it's a good time to start following the Bitcoin explorers because we're gonna travel quite
Yes.
extensively in the next 6 months, and there are so many stories to tell. We just
Mhm.
can't wait.
Yeah. What is the best
Yes.
way for folks to like support you, like financially with Lightning, Sats, all of that?
Uh, it,
Instagram,
it's okay. It's okay.
follow
To be
us.
honest with you,
Yeah.
yeah. With a follow and a share, we just started this new project. It's less than 1 year old, so we have a X account, an Instagram account, a very
Hmm.
small TikTok
Yes.
account that we are
Hmm.
just learning how to use, and then there is our YouTube
Mhm.
channels.
Hmm.
So we're just we're starting with
Yeah,
this.
and
So
feedback. If you
yeah,
guys wish to see something specific on our travels, like I want to see more of your
yeah,
daily routine, or I want to
Hmm.
hear more about Bitcoin, whatever. If you have any feedback,
yeah.
that would be amazing.
What we try to do is to make Bitcoin a little bit more pop with our travels
Hmm.
and with what we do. So just give us a follow, watch what we do, and if you have any kind of tips or whatever, just reach out to us, because we are so looking forward to meet new people while we travel and on social media.
And if you want to tip, go on Nostr. I have an account. Zap us. I will share it with Rikki.
That's what she
Wait,
says.
you have an account on Nostr? I don't know if I know
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Oh, okay. It's so hard to search on Nostr. That's another
It's
thing. So, like,
impossible to search on
Yeah,
Nostr. It's
yeah.
not hard. I have an
yeah,
account as well, but there's
yeah, I
a
knew
lot
you
of
did.
work to
Yeah,
be done.
yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll be in
Thank you,
touch,
Trey.
and
Thank you.
I'm excited to follow along. And I'll
Yeah.
be sure to share all of those things as well. All right.
Thank you, my
Thank you guys so
friend.
much.
Take care.
Thank you.